I am not gonna lie to you, I am mad at you freaks today. After you menaces asking me for weeks, months, maybe even years to watch today's controversial film, I finally caved. And I could not have regretted it more because I fell down the deepest rabbit hole and what I found was truly shocking. And although I like to put in a little comedy, have a little lighthearted banter with you all, I am not joking today. It is, well, I am, but I'm not joking about how intense this film is. It is brutal. And today I'm going to do full spoilers, even though they don't really matter with the construction of this story, because I'm telling you right now, you do not want to watch this film. And what I found about this film is far more valuable than really the content of the movie itself. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why I am stating this. We're about to get into all the details, and this will be confronting. Because today we're talking about Melancholie der Angel, also referred to in English as the Angel's Melancholia. I'm going to call it the Angels. Let's get straight into it. This is a German extreme art house film from 2009, and it's written and directed by the underground filmmaker Marian Dora. Trust me, I have a lot to say about him, and we will get into it with some evidence. So he wrote this film with a man called Carsten Frank, who is credited in this film as Frank Oliver. Because, get this, he claims, and he has never come out, I do want to say he's never come out and said this himself, but sources claim online, and the director himself claims, that he doesn't want to be associated with this film that he wrote. He is deeply uncomfortable with the material, including animal cruelty, which is prevalent in this movie. A lot of my information today is because of a 2017 documentary, a very fringe documentary, called Revisiting Melancholie der Angel, where Dora is interviewed by the documentary maker Magnus Blomdahl. It is said, allegedly on the streets, that Frank did not agree with how far the Dora went. He felt misled and wanted to distance himself from the production and insisted that they have another name for him credited. Great start. I love when the co-writer for a film wants to publicly distance themselves from the production. Oh, and one detail here, he's also in the film. He's one of the 2 stars of the movie. He plays one of the lead characters in the film, and he's in some very questionable scenes himself. This is gonna get messy. Okay, so on the surface, this story is a film about 2 men, Katster and Brau, who pick up 2 young women at a carnival and lure them into a remote decaying house tied to their dark past. There's also Anya, who seems to know what's going on as these 2 women are lured in. She's almost like a sidekick, but her role is never fully explained, like a lot of things in this movie. She's very Pinhead vibes. In fact, towards the end of the film, she has this metal rod across her face as she's doing something very questionable. Let's say she's dispelling liquids both ways. But they're also joined by 2 other characters in this house of horrors. One they call Heinrich, who is this tall, strange older man who's obsessed with bugs, and he brings with him a young woman in a wheelchair whose name is Clarissa. The group here descends into days of ritualistic cruelty, sexual violence, animal death, and spiritual collapse. The film drifts between fragmented timelines and surrealist imagery, presenting a nihilistic, almost dreamlike portrait of human decay rather than any traditional plot. Think Begotten, but like a live action one that is incredibly long. Because this film is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. And I am not one who hates long movies. In fact, I really enjoy going to the cinema, watching a 3-hour movie, being really in the moment. This was grueling because the film is full of nonsensical dialogue where the writers don't care if you understood it or not. And I do have proof of this. But while the director Dora says that this film is a movie about friendship, among other things, I would say the common themes seen throughout the movie, the things that kind of weave it together, are bugs, torture, and buttholes. There is a lot of activity down there. There's a lot of activity going on, and it's not the activity you think. It's really not. Touching things and smelling things, and it's not even really that sexual. So this all happens inside a bizarre timeline set inside this haunted house of memories. Got it? Don't worry, I'll give you the details. But here in this bizarro land, we jump through time. And I should have known what was to come when I sat down to watch it. In fact, before I started the film, I don't know why, but I read this little part off the Wikipedia page. Why does it say It says here that the film has garnered a cult following within the extreme cinema community. And just scrolling through this, the controversy part of Wikipedia says that the film has been deemed one of the most controversial films of all time. Many critics of the film have denounced the film's scenes of violence and animal cruelty. My cat just entered the room. Girl, maybe this time not for you. Including genuine footage of something happening to a pig. There's animal carcasses used as props and a scene where I'm not going to repeat that in front of my cat. Despite many sources saying that that scene was fake, Dora himself has never given a clear answer. What am I doing? Okay, while we're at the animal stuff, I do want to touch on this now because this lack of clarification carries through the documentary, which I watched after seeing the film, obviously, and it completely changed my mind about several things. But he doesn't clarify in the documentary anything to do with the animals. It is noted that a lot of people believe the pig is real. The pig has to be real from, unfortunately, what I've seen. It just has to be. But it makes me wonder, does he not want to share the truth because of potential backlash or because of this edgelord energy he seems to have? He does talk about, unfortunately, there's a bunny scene. I'm not going to talk too much about that. And he talks about how the bunny is real, but it's not ended in the film. But the cat is never clarified. In saying all of that, I know you've already got Whiplash, but it's about to get so much worse. Let's do a detailed breakdown of the so-called narrative in this film. And then I'm really going to blow your mind with some stuff I found. So the film begins with a strange montage, which tells you immediately what kind of world you're stepped into. It's a pregnant woman. She's naked and terrified, and she is in pain. There are carcasses everywhere. Honestly, this has little to do with the rest of the story from my point of view or my interpretation. But we have close-ups of insects crawling along bones, anything creepy, spooky. And then these really cool masks appear that look like they've wandered out of a cursed carnival, which honestly I was hoping would stick around for longer because they were the coolest part of the entire film. You're looking at it right now. This is as good as it gets. All of this is paired with gentle music, which feels like it belongs in an adventure journey film. And then we shift to a European carnival, hence the masks, where these two older men, as mentioned, Katze, who is Frank, the co-writer Frank, and Brow lurk in the crowd to find two teenage girls. I did not know when I was watching this film that they are teenagers, but apparently that's what they were intended to be, two virgins, if you really need to know. They don't look like teenagers to me, which I guess softened the blow of what's about to happen. They take these girls into first a bar and then to a cave dwelling where Anya appears, and then they drive back to this haunted house. And this is where the film fully abandons the narrative structure. The movie time jumps around with the only signal being the moon marking the start of a new day. I honestly didn't mind the erratic time jumps because knowing it was meant to take place in this singular location, it felt more like this house was holding memories. And I could understand that. I got the concept. And once in the house, Heinrich, the older man, arrives with Clarissa. The film's attitude towards Clarissa is enough to put me over the edge. She becomes a point of mockery and experimentation for the house and everything going on in there, as she is beaten, mocked, teased, and taunted, and of course, abused. At one point, her colostomy bag is messed with, it is grim, and she is dragged throughout the house. It is awful, awful. As you've probably guessed, the camera is obsessed with all kinds of fluids from the body, from the mouth to the bottom. Everything you can think of is in this film in terms of fluid behavior. They're also obsessed with all kinds of bugs. There's maggots, worms. At some points, there's even daddy long legs. And this is intercut with the carcasses just casually put throughout the film. If it sounds like I'm making no sense, it's because the film is jarring like that, and it's jumping from these images and these sequences, doing these things to people, back to bugs, back to people doing things, and all of this with wishy-washy dialogue. I will say the dialogue, what I watched, it doesn't really have a great translation to English from German. But this all leads to everyone being infected by the house, as if the building itself is a rotting organism that changes the people inside it. And the biggest clue to this is when they first approach the house, Katzer has an episode where he needs to get out of the car and gather himself, and his demeanor from the start of the film compared to the end of the film, I mean, the visuals say everything. Again, a lot of this is up to interpretation, but visually, that's how I interpret his kind of arc. Because while staying in the house, he learns from Brow that he is dying, and then he encounters this nun we keep seeing, which draws out, I guess, his religious thoughts about death. And then comes the pig sequence. The footage is allegedly not staged, as they take a pig and do a lot of things to it. This is a huge pig, by the way. And this is intercut with a sequence of Anya being sexually assaulted in the mud by Brow. There's also religious imagery intercut. A lot of people describe this part of the film as the point of no return. This is where it becomes morally and ethically indefensible. Not long after that comes the cat scene. Again, nonsensical, very vicious, and just haunting. And then turning back to the two girls who they picked up at the carnival from the start, Melanie and Bianca. Well, Bianca begins to be treated like a child, which is really weird compared to how she was shown at the start of the film. And there's this strange scene where she is put to sleep, tucked in at night, by her friend who she was with from the start, Melanie. Bianca also becomes a crucial part in the end of this film, the main target of the group's aggression as she is brutally assaulted, them cutting part of her body out. And unfortunately, in one of the most intense moments of the film, Clarissa meets her end herself when she is wheeled off to a small cliffside, and because of the abuse that she's endured, she decides to jump. Her face before this scene and after this scene, it is really burnt into my memory. And if you Google the movie, it will probably come up because it has impacted people that much. It's basically like a poster of the film. These are the moments in the film that stick out because they are the moments where people and animals... Oh my God, my cat just jumped up next to me. It's okay, sweetie. These are the moments where humans and animals are used as just pure props. And it honestly brings nothing to the story. There are already so much horrendous activities happening outside of just these moments. They didn't need them to drive a point home, nor did they need them to extend the runtime. Trust me, it adds nothing to the story. And the film spirals from this point into escalating violence, self-harm, and degradation. The old man is disemboweled on a rowboat. Bodies are burnt on an open fire and people are getting off to it or taking the opportunity to piss to relieve themselves. Watching. There is so much fluid in this movie. The cycle of violence fractures the group until it is no more. Anya then finally guides Katsa to his final resting place. And that's the end of the film. What if I told you there was information about this that makes it all so much worse? Because the thing is, the director for this film, Dora, is kind of like a underground figure who functions almost like a myth. The film was shot in 2006 over the course of 3 chaotic weeks, largely without a traditional script. I found this photo of the script, but Dora has claimed that it was the worst time of his life. And as we know, his co-writer and star, Carsten Frank, credited as Frank Oliver, eventually distanced himself from the final project using a pseudonym. This fact is so wild to me because after watching the movie and knowing that he did that, he is in some of the worst scenes. There is no way he wouldn't know what was going on. He is in a lot of the butt stuff. That's him. And it is alleged that he was disturbed by all this content that had nothing to do with him. It was footage that he never saw or was shot without him, material that was added after he left, content that didn't exist in the original script, and editing he didn't consent to. He said that these extremes really changed the dramatic tone of the film. And I'm gonna need to see this original outline or script in English, because what did he think he was making? It's like saying I thought August Underground was a rom-com set in August. But let's talk a little bit more about Dora. Because Dora has said in an interview with Severed Cinema, titled Bending Morality, that the film is about friendship and the destiny of 2 leading males. And he added if he wanted to shock people, he could have done much better. He also said in the same interview, the girl in the wheelchair was a victim and she was consequently treated as a victim. For the film, it's not very important what happens to this girl. only the feeling and the thinking of the main protagonists is important. I can't tell you how much these two men are obsessed with butt stuff in this movie. Playing with matter. Is this really the important part of the film, how these two men feel about that? I'm sorry. My point is that Dora, his attitude towards the victims is visible in every frame of this movie. They have no arc. They barely get called by their name. I had to verify the names at the end of watching this movie because I was so confused. So if I got anyone's name wrong, that's why. They are basically props to him and he does not deny it. And this is where the documentary really floored me and changed my whole perception of this movie, because it didn't just confirm how chaotic and ethically unhinged the production was, it also showed that while some fringe fans call this a pivotal piece of cinema, Dora himself doesn't buy into that praise at all. In the 2017 documentary revisiting Melancholie der Angel, the director, Magnus Blomdahl, said that he started this documentary with his own questions and he finished it with more questions. And you can find this documentary on YouTube. I know a lot of people have spent years tracking it down. Luckily, when I was looking for it, it was pretty readily available. I will link, as normal, all of my sources down below. I do recommend, if you are interested in this film, checking out this documentary. It's only an hour long. But Dora himself in this documentary says that he was extremely frustrated after filming the movie, and he said that he felt like he only reached 10% of what he hoped the film would actually be. He said that the entire process was a technical and emotional disaster. And after this, he never wanted to make anything again. He said it was one of the worst times of his life, and it changed him fundamentally. The documentary, of course, touches on the controversy with Frank, and Dora says in his own words that he struggled to get the film cleared by Frank, and as a result, they had a professional breakup. But why I'm mentioning this again is because in this part, he also talked about how there was 30 minutes of extreme footage that was cut from the film. There is a extended cut online that you can find if you know where to search. I was gonna watch this version. I was really gonna go all the way, but it doesn't have English subtitles. And I'm so glad I didn't now. I can't imagine what would be in that. But it's unclear if these were the 30 minutes missing that Frank wanted to cull. And Frank had a very good reason why he wanted to cull this. Because Dora said Frank was afraid of legal consequences. And in this documentary, he goes on to say what these legal consequences could have been. And I can tell you right now, this has crossed a line. I like disturbing cinema. I like fictional cinema. Fictional. Because when Dora was pressed in this documentary asking what these legal consequences could be, he said that he shot a scene in the morgue. He said it was a very important and pivotal part of the film and the flashbacks. He said without it, the film loses crucial context. It's then when it becomes the realization of the documentary filmmaker that he's talking about a scene with a real corpse, and they obtained it through blackmail. Yes, they blackmailed the guy who worked at the morgue to get this footage. He said, and I quote, "They had the opportunity to blackmail the man working at the morgue a little bit, and they took it." This isn't just morally unhinged, it reframes the entire thought process behind the film's creation. And this is when I realized that this film wasn't a metaphor for chaos and everything that was happening in these characters' heads, everything that this house was doing to them. This really happened, because in the final moments of this documentary, Dora says that he was obsessed with people like Charles Manson. He names Charles Manson, in fact. He said he was obsessed with the way he could manipulate people and get them to do exactly what he wanted them to do. And he did this at every opportunity he could. Quote, "During the shooting, I used every trick to manipulate people." He said he didn't show them the script, he didn't shoot chronologically, and he tried to push it as far as he could. Now, a lot of the information in the documentary is very conflicting, which is why the documentary maker started with questions and left with even more questions. Because this part is only put in the end, and it almost seems like it's a hot mic situation, because earlier in the documentary, he talks about how bad the production was, how much he hated it, how miserable everybody was, and how he woke up every morning hoping that the producer would end this film and just say it's over. He also stated that he put all my love, all my hate, all my fear, and all all my thoughts about life and human existence and about death into it. And according to the documentary, in the original script, we see it and we see listed urine and other body fluids. So that was in the original idea. I don't know the Frank stuff. He is all over the place. But in the original script, that was all part of it. So I'm putting together all of these different pieces from people's different sides, from opinions online, and of course from Dora's quotes himself. And I think what he's talking about when he wanted the producer to end the production, that he was not happy with the 10% of his vision that was coming out. And he thought, again, the quote, that it was a technical disaster. I think that the film wasn't looking or feeling the way that he wanted to capture it. In the documentary, he talks about being embarrassed by the way it was shot, and he seems quite bitter about the improvement in technology now with indie films and what's available to them. He also kind of blames the audience for how they took the film. He said, quote, "You can't have the approach to understanding everything when you watch it. When you only have 2 hours of their life, it's impossible. But come on, if the viewer is lost in a fictional story that you wrote and they gave it 2 hours and 40 minutes of their time to try and understand, and they don't understand even the concept of the movie without rewatching it, looking at breakdowns, trying to understand interviews, is that really the viewer's fault? Isn't that kind of your job to explain your vision to the viewer, and they're showing up to watch your movie? We're not asking for a killer origin story. I don't care about these dudes' upbringing, but maybe just some kind of narrative." He also explained in the documentary that one of the leads was meant to be a werewolf. I've never heard anyone talk about that in their interpretation of the movie. He was a werewolf. That's why he did that to the bunny. He said that. Did you know this was a werewolf film? We're how long into this video and we're just finding this out. Welcome to my life. And here's the thing. I promised you Whiplash because you're about to get another whip. This analysis is wild. I really tried to make this cohesive, but this is the wildest journey because damn Dora, keeps contradicting himself every opportunity he gets because he also claims that this film is based loosely on a true crime case. It's not fantasy. Apparently, it's something that happened years earlier, but he admits he does not know the details, which tracks. But unlike his 2006 film Cannibal, which is based on a very famous case, a verified true case, he says Angels was inspired by an old house where people used to gather and 3 to 4 people disappeared without explanation. Inside the abandoned house, apparently they found remains, including ones belonging to a child. But no one has been able to verify or figure out what case he's talking about. People have tried to find this case. People have tried to narrow it down. People say it happened in the 70s, but no one can verify. And he showed us the area where it happened in the documentary. So if you can't verify what happened in the 70s in that area, I'm going to take a stab at allegedly. I don't think it happened. Imagine it is a true crime and he made it a story about friendship between 2 men and the butt stuff. And in saying all of this, the reaction to this film has been pretty brutal through the eyes of horror critics. Some calling it pretentious, the other calling it an endurance test, which I love that, and most at least hinting at its moral bankruptcy. But Dora himself explains in the documentary that he does have fans, and I do believe this. I've seen the 5-star reviews. He said that someone even came up to him at a film festival wanting him to sign something, saying that the film saved his life. And this divide, of course, explains why the film continues to circulate in conversations about extreme cinema. For some, it's a masterpiece of nihilistic art, and for others, it's a moral and aesthetic catastrophe. For me, The Angels feels like a concept that just never took off. Reading about it initially, knowing it's about 2 men who reunite and go to this haunted place full of these disgusting, tormenting memories. I get it. It sounds pretty interesting, especially for someone who likes dark cinema. But on screen, what I saw does not translate to that at all. Maybe it could have been translated in a short film, a medium film, even a feature-length film. They really should have cut out all of the exploitative stuff, all of those scenes. They would have trimmed it down dramatically. But also, if they wanted to keep some things in there, even if it was for shock value, but more so if it actually aided the plot and story and the aim, the message and meaning and moral dilemma of the movie, that would make more sense. But also it would actually shock the viewer a little bit more because all of this happening at the same time, all of these sequences intercut, all of this montage of memories inside this haunted house, All of the fluids, all of the butt stuff just meant the story or anything remotely close to it was lost on us. It would have been so much more of an impact if you keep those moments short and if you really try to connect with the viewer. The moment that stays with me the most is Clarissa's end. And this is because the film at least pauses for a moment, enough to acknowledge her as a character and all of the suffering she has been through. And ironically, this is the moment that Dora himself said in an interview that it is not important. Her character is not important. But the reason it sticks with me is because of the emotional weight of this unknown character who was just tossed aside. This and the animal sequences, anything that happens to the animals in this film is just so disjointed and disconnected from what he wanted the core of the story to be about. In his own words, quote, "No one dies forever." And he said it's also a film about life, desire, and his own relationship with human melancholy. The fact he made a film about the rawness of human emotion and then leaves it void of any central empathy. Girl, what are you doing, Dora? It's a hollow contradiction. That's what this film is. Many films push boundaries, but they still care about the emotional or at least philosophical stakes of suffering, if they're good. Here, the cruelty is combined with indifference, and again, it turns into a battle of endurance. After seeing the film and the documentary and doing my own research, I can say that Dora didn't lose control of this film. It isn't 10% of what he hoped it to be. He was never in control of it in the first place. It should have never left the page. Should have stayed on the page marked with urine. That's what he wrote on the script. Look, I like some really dark cinema and I will go down on a hill fighting for some stuff, but this is not it. This is not it. Not for me. That is my story and my journey with this film. I will never watch this film again. I can tell you that. And I don't think you should either. But make up your own mind. At least the documentary is a little bit interesting, very controversial. I understand why this guy's in hiding, to be honest. The morgue stuff is wild. There you go, you sickos. You dared me to watch it and I did. I guess you win this time. If you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking with me. This was a long video to make and I hope it was entertaining. I hope you learned something because I always learn something from doing my videos, which is why I enjoy my job so much. But I can understand this is not the most lighthearted, fun content. So thank you for sticking with me. And if you did, we should probably write something about angels in the chat. But just to confuse people, let's not do that at all. Let's talk about gnomes. I'm just trying to think of the most random thing. Let's talk about the gnome scene. Confuse people who didn't care to watch all the way through talking about gnomes. Talk about the awfulness of the gnome scene. I love reading your comments. Thank you so much for being here. If you would like to support what I do here, sometimes YouTube is not cool with it. I'm hoping they'll be okay with this one, but I am over on Patreon. I do a bonus video every week. It is a little bit more lighthearted and kind of raw there. There's lots of reactions, spoiler chats, things like that. So if you want some more laid back content and you want to support me, I'm over there. But thank you so much for your time. Just thanks for being here. I hope you're subscribed if you do like this content. I make videos every single week and I'll be back very soon to give you some more recommendations. This is not a recommendation video. If you do like disturbing videos though, I have you covered here with some disturbing icebergs if you like long content, and I'll talk to you very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky and stay the heck away from this movie. Bye friends. If you heard anything slurping, purring, my cat is right here. She was right there the whole time. Smooch.